Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 8 of the Future Ready Librarians podcast series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and I serve as the Future Ready Librarians leader. I have the pleasure of working within my library and school community and also with others around the country and world through Future Ready librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. I am honored to bring these voices and the work of others to our podcast and to all of you. I am very excited to invite a new friend to the show. And actually, you'll probably hear about this, but a friend of a friend. And so I am very happy just to invite you, Melaney, to the show and to hear your story today. And let's just start by having you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've been listening to your podcast and I keep, looking at all the Instagram and the X connections I can make with the amazing people that you've introduced us to. So thank you for that. My name is Melaney Sanchez. I'm a teacher librarian in an elementary school in Calvert County, Maryland, which is just south of Annapolis, just south of DC. And this is my 8th year in the library. And each year I continue to add to my toolbox, but I'm eternally humbled and constantly amused by all the different ways that we can reach students, but not solo, not as an island. It has to be us, networking and being together. So I'm just super excited to meet with you and to continue to network with all of the different people that you continue to introduce us to.
Oh, I know. It's crazy to think that now this is like 8 seasons of the podcast and I learned so many great things just about everybody, but always walk away with something that I have in my head that I want to do for myself or for my kids or teachers. And I know that today, as people listen to the conversation that we're going to have, that they're going to feel this way. And when I asked Melaney what she wanted to talk about, she said that teaching is heart work. And I love that because I think that really says it all. And so let's just start by having you tell us what that means to you.
Okay. Sure, sure. In 2018, I was very fortunate to be honored and named as the Teacher of the Year for my county. And so I was introduced to teachers from the entire state and talk about just being humbled by being in a group like that. And that term just kind of came up amongst us as we spent the entire year. Maryland spoils us. They take us all over the state and we do things to help recruit teachers. The list is endless in all the different ways that they get us working together. And so to me, teaching as heart work is twofold. It is the fact that we as educators are caring for the hearts of our students because we know if we can reach them in a way that emotionally moves them, which librarians are experts at, that we can then help them academically and in all the other ways that they also need support. And that's a beautiful part of my job. Every day I can make someone's day, every day, whether it be another educator, a colleague, a parent, a student, etc. But here's the thing, your heart gets empty. There's times where you can only give so much. And I have seen librarians juggle things in ways that I didn't know were possible, right? And so I strive to be that. And some days I'm a good juggler, and other days I can't even juggle one thing very well. And so I had realized very quickly that the best way to be better was to learn from the experts. And so I started seeking them. And one of the ways I started doing that was applying to teacher institutes, because those institutes were places where I met inspiring educators from all over, not only the United States, but sometimes around the world. And those are people who were experts in whatever they were doing, because getting into an institute is hard, right? And so I started asking them and getting to know them and networking them in a way that filled my heart. And so I would say, for example, we had Frederick Douglass Literacy Night 2 years ago, but that happened 5 years after I met the key individuals at Ford's Theater and, through expeditions and education. And so those people that I met over time, I kept a folder and I had some ideas, helped me to make this amazing night for my students where we had the Frederick Douglass character actor from the National Park Service come, and our kids studied Frederick Douglass and all the amazing character traits that we would love to emulate that he had, right? So I filled my heart at my institute with Ford Theater, and then I networked. And then before you know it, I was working with our PTA. And then we were filling the hearts, not just of our kids, but of our community. And so it's multifaceted, but it's so fulfilling and it's meaningful, right? It's hard to collaborate with other people, but it's not hard to collaborate when you have a common goal in mind, and that's our kids. So I just really feel like librarians more than ever need some heart work for self, and it's okay to do that. There's another institute that is amazing. I can't give it a big enough shout out. It's called Wild Heart Teacher. And I saw it posted during COVID. And the people who run Wild Heart Teacher, he was a previous superintendent, Steve, and he said, my job is to take care of teachers and educators and support staff. He does all of it, principals, everyone can go in the summer in Colorado Springs. And so that when they go back in the fall, they're ready to give again, but it's time for them to receive. We had a massage, we went hiking, we were together in cabins. I mean, it was just all of these amazing ways that he took care of us. And then we really did go back and pay it forward and take care of others. So teaching is hard. It really is.
I love it. And that is just so true. And I think that the thing that is neat too is that you bring this like thinking to your kids, and and it's so important for not only us as librarians, but for our students, no matter what age they are, to really take care of ourselves, to learn ourselves, to immerse ourselves into something that we're passionate about. And I love like empowering kids and talking about empowering them with their own voice. And to me, like listening to you, that's exactly what we want to do with our kids.
You said it perfectly. And the thing that has been so exciting as I've built these different nights and these different events with our community is that these students are having a voice. The thing that I did this past year is I worked with the National Park Service at the National Mall, and the park ranger who I met through Ford Theater, she came here with expeditions and education. We were having a STEM day. It was amazing. And I said, hey, Ranger Jen, what are you doing tomorrow? And she's like, oh, I'm so excited. I have some kids coming to the National Mall. And I said, well, I want to come to the National Mall. And Ranger Jen said, well, you should come. I said, I will. Who can I bring? And she said, well, what grade would you bring? And I sat and thought about it for a minute, and my heart hurt and my stomach was hurting. And I said, honestly, Ranger Jen, I just want to bring them all. And she said, do it. She said, I have an idea. I said, shoot. And she said, okay. She said, one time we had a whole school come and they all came on one day. And I said, well, that sounds kind of cool, but there's no way I can get 649 kids. Buses, chaperones. We have an amazing staff, and our secretarial staff knocked it out of the park. But long story short, we ended up bringing every class, every grade to the national park for their own day on the mall. And they were experts on given monuments. We have a parent who's a photographer. She photographed, so we had the rights to all the photography. And every homeroom class wrote their own book. So we had the art teacher doing all the art with it. We had every classroom teacher working on that. And we had, the night that they were published authors and illustrators, and we had their book releases. So here we have 30 books that our students have written. And so now, like you said, they're empowered. They have words. You'll hear them saying, well, my next book is going to be about, or the next thing I write. Or next year when we go back. And honestly, I was thinking more of Fort McHenry and Mount Vernon. And Ranger Jen came for our National Mall Night. We had over 600 community members here. It was unbelievable. Gilder Lehrman exhibit. And Ranger Jen said, so what are we doing next year? And I said, well, I wasn't sure, Ranger Jen. I didn't want to, you did so much for us already. And she said, oh, Melaney, we're just getting started. And so I'll be very excited to share some things with you as they come to be. But we're returning to the National Mall next year.
Oh, that's so cool. You guys are so lucky too that you're in that part of the country where
the
you get to
proximity.
go and experience that history with your kids and these great things. But I think that's another thing, like as people are listening, they're probably thinking that, like, oh, she lives like
Sure.
super close to DC. But there are special things that we can do wherever we are. And I think one of the neat things about that is that our kids learn so much about then the places where we're from. And today I was having a conversation with Christy Vilsack. Her husband was Governor Vilsack, used to be our governor in Iowa, and they're members of our community. And Christy and I were talking about just that, like we are a small rural community in Iowa, but we have so many amazing things that we can not only learn from each other, but that we can share with other people, like your kids, that are in Maryland. And, we have farms in our community and all kinds of great things that would be so great to be able to collaborate together with a school like yours. And so as I sit here and think about that, has there been any collaboration with these people that you have met at these great institutes, and what could that look like? And then we'll figure out when we're going to collaborate.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad you asked me that because it's true. You hear of people doing things, you think, well, that's not possible, or I don't have that kind of support, or that's expensive. And I will tell you that one of the biggest game changers for me was Fulbright and Teachers for Global
Yeah.
Classrooms. The first time I applied, I did not get in. just
Yeah.
just know that once may not be enough, but you are so worth it. And so the time that I did get in, of course, COVID was in the midst of it. So it was an interesting path. It wasn't a traditional Teachers for Global Classrooms path, but they ended up, it was wonderful. In the fall, you have this coursework that was incredible. It actually changed the way I teach my college courses with some of the skills and strategies that they taught us through Fulbright. But one of the things that I learned, and I need everyone to really listen to this, we always talk about wanting to be more global and, using the United Nations global goals and all of those things. Don't forget what you just said was key. You can be global. Your students are experts about, things. I grew up in Michigan, we were experts on farming. And there are students who truly have no comprehension of what it's like to have that kind of responsibility and live that lifestyle that honestly is a beautiful way to live, right? And so I ended up getting paired with a dear friend, Jennifer Carstensen from Iowa, and her students did flip with my students. And so our local project that we did was we taught them about Maryland and all the things that we thought were pretty amazing about Maryland. And then they taught us all the things about, the area that
Love
she was
it.
from. It was great. It was great. And so, as you consider to do those kinds of things, one thing that you're doing is opening your students' eyes about other areas. And I can't speak highly enough about virtual visits.
Yeah.
Ford Theater does a ton of virtual visits. Expeditions in Education had a huge eclipse program all day long, in a national park. And so, provided all the materials, or not the materials, but resources for those materials. So Zion National Park with landforms, they will meet with you in your class online. So I think that the more we network and support each other in those collaborations, the more we'll realize that it's not as much work and it's a ton of fun and super motivating and empowering for our kids, because this is real world, right? This is not for an assignment. This is for the sheer joy of it, like you were saying.
And I think that that's so important to remember is that, I always tell people, like, don't be afraid to reach out to people. That if we had a little guy once, and our kids went to the zoo here in Des Moines, and they didn't have a polar bear, and so he was so sad, first grader. And so I just started reaching out to zoos that I knew had like polar bears and big exhibits about them, and to bring that to him, or to bring like someone that we had a hog genetic like specialist from MIT once talk to our kids. Like those are things that we don't have to be the expert on anything really on, and we can find it on anything. And I think that's the neat thing too about being a librarian now, is because that's part of our role too, is to find these resources that aren't just on the shelf or aren't just online, but actually people that we can connect our kids to. And that is so powerful.
I couldn't agree more. It is so true. We do not have to take it all on our shoulders. And I think that was my biggest mistake as a new librarian, is that I thought I had to do all of it. There were days, and I know I'm very blessed by this, but we would have 8 volunteers in the library helping to coordinate that national mall, especially pulling the books
Yes.
together to send them in to be printed, you know. So many hands make light work, and
Yeah.
start small, right? Start small. Start with, work with the 4th grade team and work with Zion and landforms if that's maybe aligns with their science curriculum, and help them to help their kids see how real world the things they're studying and how meaningful they are. And yeah, the polar bear example is perfect.
I know that was pretty nice. It was really fun. So when people too are wondering, like, how do I just get started? I think that is something that's really important to share with people if they are interested in this, how to make that first step.
Yeah, I think it is. And it can look different for different people. For me personally, my walk was, there are Facebook groups, and I know I give you the names of those.
Yes.
There's one that's Teachers on the Move, and the other one is Scholarships for Teachers. It's a longer title. I don't have it off the top of my head. But on those pages, people are constantly posting. That's where Fulbright came to be for me. My very first one I met through, it was like through a friend of a friend, right? Another librarian. And I attended Gilder Lehrman in New York City. And I was like, this is amazing, and then NEH, Wild Heart, upstate New York, learning about the Gilded Age, right? Colonial Williamsburg. We were treated so incredibly beautifully. And then Mount Vernon, they came right in and did something very, very close to that, where, then all of the learning that I was doing was coming together. Right. So I think that if you are able to, take a look at those Facebook pages and you just check into them every so often, there are constantly things happening. NEH helped to pay for some of my expenses with that given piece. And then another one that I definitely have to commend, Fulbright was a game changer.
Um,
After Fulbright, Jennifer and I, while we were in France for that piece, we went to France and learned about the classrooms there and the education system there. We were at dinner one night and she's like, I'm going to write a fund for teachers. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. And I said, what are you going to do? And she's like, I want to study, the displaced persons in the refugee camps in Europe. And so last summer we had written a fund for teachers and we ended up with a $10,000 grant. And we went to Athens and Rome and Lesbos, Greece. And we met with the different people there and the different organizations that have been helping refugees and displaced persons, so that we could better understand the students that we have in our schools, right? So, just again, making those networks big. And I will say the United Nations, with their global goals, they have the world's largest lesson plan. That is a plethora of resources that is just super motivating, super real world. And, there's another place that some people might really appreciate the contents that are there.
Oh, that is so great. I know I love it. And I'll make sure that these things are also included in the notes of the podcast so people can find it. And so I'm excited. I was telling Melanie before we met today that my sister Heather is also a librarian. And I was just recently telling her, like, we are going to do this, Heather, because if you love to not only see other parts of the world, but to help others, and I think, as you said, just to, help your own heart. And that is something that really stands out as being important to you. And also, I know, to all of our listeners too. So I'm grateful that you were able to join us, and just puts that inspiration back in us if we're feeling, this time of year can be a little bit stressful. And so it's really, really great to just hear your story and to hear that inspiration. So we're grateful for you.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me share. And can I just talk about one more that I know everyone will love?
Of course you can. Yes.
So, Expeditions in Education is it deals with STEAM. So all librarians, right? We have our maker spaces. We have all those ways that we collaborate with teachers in those areas. And each year they go to different national parks and you study the STEAM contents of that given national park. So Crater Lake was my first one, and we studied the invasive crayfish, right? And those kinds of things. Last year was New River Gorge, and we looked at dragonfly larvae in the bottom of the river and mercury levels and those kinds of things. Acadia, we looked at the invasive green crab, and this summer I'm headed to Assateague. So situations like applying for places like Expedition Education, number one, that is one of the teacher institutes for me that has been amazing because it's a year-round connection if you wish to continue. As well as each year, you're always looking forward to which national parks do I have the opportunity to apply for? Because that's the other piece, right? Sometimes we need to unplug and be in nature because the pace of a library, no one understands until you become a librarian.
Yes, exactly. Summertime can be a good time to take some time for us. I love it. If people have questions too, where can they find you online?
Sure. So all of my things are the Library Doctor, and it's DR. My YouTube channel, my Instagram, X, Facebook, all of it, the Library Doctor. So that's an easy way to do that. And in any way I can help anyone, know that I would definitely do that, because I truly believe that if we work through, all the challenges that we face every day together, it's so much better. It's just so much better.
Yeah, it totally is. Oh, well, you inspired me, my friend, and I can't wait till everybody hears this story. And I also just can't wait to keep in touch and find a way for us to connect our kids. So that will be on our list for next year. How about that?
That sounds perfect.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
As always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett. You make a difference in our libraries, schools, and within our lives and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything you do. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast and put it to use within your practice as a future ready librarian. If I can support you in any way, please feel free to reach out to me on X or Instagram at Shannon M. Miller, or to my email at shannonmcclintockmiller@gmail.com. I am always happy to help. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.